this situation with Ace Bailey and the Jazz is just starting to get more weird, and I would say funny at the same time. I remember last night laughing when Ace Bailey got drafted by the Jazz because you could clearly see it. He didn't want to get drafted by them. He was panicking when they had the pick, and once he got picked, he looked like a guy who had been sentenced to go to prison. Like a judge had issued him like a prison sentence. That's how he looked. He just looked frustrated, depressed, sad about it. And it was very obvious he didn't want to go there. And when you hear about all the other reports that confirm that his agent was trying to get the top five teams in the draft not to draft him, ultimately, according to the rumors, he wanted to go to the Washington Wizards. That was like his destination team. It didn't work out with the Jazz drafting him. Now, I do find it interesting how he felt that he could dictate where he wanted to go, considering that he's not a generational talent. I would say he's supposedly a good player in the sense that he could be possibly an all-star player, but not great where he's like a superstar to make that type of move. But yeah, I found it interesting that he thought he could control his destination, and it failed. But now the situation is that he didn't even show up today to Salt Lake City. The other draft pick that the Jazz had, I believe it was, what's his name? I'm trying to remember. Let me just look it up. Yeah, so the Jazz's other first round pick, Walter Clayton Jr., showed up today to report to the Jazz, but Ace Bailey was nowhere to be seen. He didn't show up in Salt Lake, and he's missing. Now the Jazz have said that they're going to give him until Monday to show up. That's not a big deal. I guess that's what they're trying to paint the narrative as, that they're perfectly fine with him taking his time, but they expect him to show up on Monday to sign with them and to get ready for the Summer League. So now we have a few days to wait to see if he will actually show up with the Jazz. And that's where the situation just gets really interesting. I remember 26 years ago during the 99 NBA draft when the Vancouver Grizzlies had a number 2 pick. For those of you young people who don't know, before they were in Memphis, they were originally in Vancouver. But anyways, Vancouver was not a popular destination back then. No NBA player wanted to be there. It was like the Siberia of the NBA back in those days. But Steve Francis especially didn't want to be there. He ended up getting drafted with the number 2 pick, and he broke down emotionally. He started crying. He was sobbing. He was even in a worse state than Ace Bailey. He clearly didn't want to go there. He was crying tears of depression, not joy. He hated the Grizzlies. He was upset. And he didn't even hide it, I believe, back then. He was vocal about not wanting to be there, that he did not want to be in Vancouver. He hated being there. He just didn't want to be part of that city. He was upset. And to a large degree, I think that spelled the end of the Grizzlies, in the sense that by him winning that standoff with them, they really weren't a viable franchise anymore, even in Vancouver, because it just showed to the fans that they can't get a legit star player to ever want to be there. So just the support continued to erode while they were there. It just made matters worse with Steve Francis refusing to sign with them. Ultimately, what happened was he forced a holdout, and he got traded to the Houston Rockets for like several role players. He ended up there. And yeah, that was pretty much the end of that situation. But that's like the last time I've seen a successful holdout by an NBA player drafted in the first round, that he was able to get out of the situation he was drafted in and into a much more preferable destination. It hasn't happened in 26 years, which shows you how much power an NBA team has when they draft you. Now, I just looked it up here that his options are that he can refuse to sign with them. He definitely can. But in this situation, he would not be able to play in the NBA for at least the whole entire year. No team would be able to sign him. And then once he tries to come back next summer, the Jazz would have his rights. So what that means is that he would be a restricted free agent and they can match any deal that any other team offers him. So essentially he would still be stuck with the Jazz and that there would be no way to really get out of this. So in this situation, Ace Bailey does not have the leverage. That there's just no way for him to get around this, which is pretty funny. I don't see Danny Ainge buckling in this situation. He's a very shrewd GM. He was very shrewd in Boston, and I don't think he'll be any less shrewd in Utah in this situation. If I'm Ainge, I don't buckle because you have all the leverage. The Jazz were garbage this year. I think the year before they were trash. They've been pretty irrelevant for the last few years. Ever since they got rid of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, they haven't been a legit team. So them not being able to sign Ace Bailey right now is not a dire situation because they're not expected to do much next season anyways. And plus, if he does a holdout, it could be a benefit. It could be a benefit to them in the sense that they could tank for another guy next year, a possibly better prospect, and still keep him for next summer and sign him to a restricted deal. So it's kind of like they have all the power in this situation. If you're Ainge, you tell them like, yeah, well, you may not like being here, but we're not going to get rid of you. So you can choose to accept this, or you can make it very hard on yourself, but we're just not going to trade you. That's honestly what I would tell him and just say like, well, just deal with it. So you look at the situation, I can't see a way Ace Bailey can win. I cannot see a way he can win this situation, the standoff with them. If he does do what people think he's going to do on Monday and not show up and sign with them, it's going to be a pretty funny situation. I'm just going to laugh at it because, like I said, I just don't see him winning this. I don't see him winning this, and I think it's important the Jazz hold strong. I'm not a Jazz fan, but you can't let a guy like that dictate where he wants to go. Getting drafted to the NBA is a privilege. You don't have the right to determine where you get drafted. Now, once you become a free agent, an unrestricted free agent, you can determine where you want to play. That's perfectly fine. I think all players should have the right of free agency, but you do not get the right to dictate where you get drafted. That is totally Bush League, and it's not good for the league because if players got to dictate where they wanted to get drafted, there would be only a few teams that they would be willing to go to, mainly the big markets, and then the small markets would be pretty much irrelevant within a 5 to 6 year span if all the players could choose where they wanted to play. Essentially, once they got drafted, that would destroy the league. So no, they can't allow him to win the standoff because you guys send a message to all these other young guys coming in that you can't choose where you want to go. You got to accept wherever you get drafted and just deal with it. And no one's going to feel sorry for you because you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars. In this case, Ace Bailey is eligible for a 4-year, $40 million deal. No one's going to have any empathy for him that he's in a dire situation or unfair situation. Yeah, yes, I understand that Salt Lake is a dull, boring city. It's not a place a young 19-year-old wants to be. It's not Miami. It's not New York. It's not LA, but those are the cards he's dealing with. And like I said, it's like he's not going to suffer. So just there's no one should feel bad for this guy if he does what he does. It's clownish behavior. It shows great immaturity, but it also shows how these guys are spoiled and pampered. The moment they show any potential about being great prospects, I'm sure he's been spoiled throughout middle school, high school, and college since he's been playing basketball, and hence why he has this attitude about wanting to determine where he can play because he's probably used to getting whatever he wants. So it's a bad look. It's definitely a bad look on his part, and especially if he decides to pull this stunt. So I don't really have anything else to say about this.